My name is Jason Braganza. I'm the Executive Director at the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, AFRODAD. We are a Pan-African civil society organization that was established over 25 years ago to advance an African perspective on issues of public debt.
Can you tell us, Candy, why you felt it is important for you to come here and what we are doing here?
The conference being organized today by our Uchumi coalition here in Kenya is very important because the debt issue, not just in Kenya but in Africa as a whole, is beginning to have a very deep effect and impact on the lives of African citizens. We are seeing countries that are beginning to default, and the cost of those defaults are being transferred directly to citizens through the high cost of living, through very regressive tax policies and measures that are being introduced.
We have seen Western countries and other countries saying that Africa has the potential, it has the resources, everything that we need is in Africa, yeah? But we see that African countries are the most indebted countries, yeah? Why is this?
I think there's a number of factors. First and foremost, one needs to understand how the global system works. The global system is designed in a way that has still retained a lot of the colonial ways of doing things, which means it's very extractive. It's one direction, taking things away from the continent and taking them to other parts of the world. The second one is that a lot of the money that could be generated from these resources are not being kept in the continent. Things are being extracted or being produced on the continent, but the money is also being taken away. So that means that it leaves a bit of a gap in the budget or in the coffers of our governments, which is then forcing them to borrow. Number three, there's a big issue around governance and corruption and transparency and lack of transparency and accountability. So a lot of the institutions that we have on the continent are not actually being effective in how they are conducting transparency, accountability, and promoting good governance. They're not holding leaders to account. They're not asking them to answer the difficult questions about how they are using the money that is being borrowed. They're not asking them questions about how these resources that we have on the continent, why aren't they contributing to the transformation and the development of the continent. So there are a number of problems. Some of them are global in nature. Some of them are historical with regard to the colonial and neo-colonial system that is still in place. And some of them are also internal. We as a continent, as a people, are not using our power of the vote, our power of mobilization to hold our leaders to account.
Yeah, you're talking about now the defaulting and the factors that are associated now this defaulting, yeah?
Yes.
We have seen those countries, Zambia, we have now Ghana, and Ethiopia is also thinking of defaulting.
Yes.
What is the risk of this particular decision, and what leads a country to take this particular decision?
I think there are four factors. The decision to default is not an easy one. It usually arises from the fact that you have borrowed money, that money has not translated into revenue. And when the debt becomes mature and you need to pay for it, you're not able to pay for it. And because you've not created any revenue from it. The risk from that is that you've not used the debt in the right way. Either you've used it for consumption, like to pay salaries or to increase the public wage bill, instead of investing it in a productive sector that can generate revenue. The second issue is around the implications of defaulting. Immediately what's going to happen is the credit rating of a country is going to decline, and its ability to receive or borrow more in the international markets is going to reduce. The third issue is around the domestic policies around taxation. The government is going to have to introduce very tough tax policies like we're seeing currently in Kenya with all the new taxes that have been introduced in for the new fiscal year. There are going to be cuts in public expenditure and so on and so forth. So it is a very tough type of decision to make. And the last point really is that it takes away the power of the citizens to actually do anything about it, because the government has decided to go down this path without thinking through the implications and the consequences of taking this type of decision.
Yeah. You have seen in Kenya, in order to solve this issue of the debt and be able to generate money, they are calling for more, the president is saying of more privatization of resources and facilities. Do you think this is a very good way to be able to manage debt and be able to generate income?
Absolutely not. Privatization in a country like ours is not going to help, particularly where they are talking about privatizing public resources or public infrastructure like education, like health. All that's going to do is create an elite sector. It's going to create marginalization, because we all know when you privatize, the objective of a private enterprise is to make money. They don't care about the quality, they don't care about access. And so those are not necessarily the right way to go about privatizing. And remember, this is also linked very much to the other point I mentioned about the neo-colonial way of doing things, the neoliberal way, where the market is supposedly supposed to have all the answers to the problems of our country. But my advice and my opinion is that privatization is not the way. In fact, what the government should be doing is actually saying we want to protect public infrastructure, we want to protect education, we want to protect healthcare, we want to protect water, and we want to protect energy. That way, you ensure that the general public and Kenyan citizens have the basic access to food, health, water, and sanitation, and energy.
You have talked about the neo-colonialism as we conclude, yeah? Do you think now is the time now Africa starts now coming up its own system that it can be able to hold people accountable and be able to hold people in account?
Yes, absolutely. I always say in some of these functions, like the conference we're having here today, it is okay to say no. If somebody gives you bad advice or you think the advice is not good, it's okay to say no. And this is the moment that we are facing as a continent. There's a huge opportunity. We saw it during COVID-19, when a lot of the African continent was excluded from accessing COVID-19 vaccinations. We've seen it now with the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, where we're suffering with our food sovereignty, because we have to import wheat, we have to import fertilizer, yet we have very much arable land that is available on this continent that we can grow our own food. We're seeing it with the conflict now in the Middle East, the rise of fuel prices, which is affecting our production, it's affecting the cost of living in our country, so in our continent. So it's very possible for us as a people, for us as a continent, to stand up and say enough is enough. We want to make decisions that are benefiting our people, our continent, and making sure that our continent becomes a rule maker and not a rule taker.
Finally, what is your call to action today as we conclude?
Say no. No to debt. No more debt in this country. No more debt on this continent. We are tired. The taxation that comes with it is extremely painful and extremely punitive. And it's time to make Africa a rule maker, not a rule taker.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you. Tunaona, tunasikia na tutabonga. The voice.